Today, we're breaking down Model Context Protocol in NAN. We'll be walking you through MCP triggers and clients in both NAN Cloud as well as self-hosted setups. So that way you can compare them side by side. As a bonus, I'll also be covering some of the core terminology you need to know when you're getting started. Now, keep in mind, MCP is still a pretty new technology, which means things may evolve over the next few years. So if this video does feel outdated, feel free to check out the channel for the latest version, as I'll be covering other MCP updates in the near future. Also, if you need any help building out NAN workflows for your business, I am taking on customers. I'll have the link down below in the description. With that out of the way, let's jump into MCP. So I know definitions and terminology is kind of hit or miss. So if you just want to skip this and jump right into the workflows, do it. But if you want to learn a little bit more about MCP, differences between right now, cloud and self-host, watch this. It won't be too long, and I promise you'll learn a few things. So first, what is MCP? Well, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, as I mentioned in the intro, but it's an open standard that was developed by Anthropic that enables AI models to interface with external tools, APIs, and data sources via a universal standardized method. And I might think about this like in workflows, right? You attach a bunch of tools to an AI agent. You're like, well, isn't this the same thing? Well, it's going to be a little bit different, right? And you'll see it over the next few slides. You'll see it as we build this out, but just know it's very similar, right? So there's two different things that you're going to have to use within NAN. So the first one is going to be your MCP server trigger node, right? And as you know, triggers typically start a workflow. So this is the NAN node that enables a workflow to act as an MCP server exposed via a special HTTP endpoint that external agents like Claude or other LLM hosts can connect to for tool access. So let's say you have type of workflows you set up as a tool, right? You can set this directly in the MCP server trigger. On the other hand, right, you have your MCP client tool node, and this is what you attach to an AI agent, right? This node is for connecting your NAN workflow to external MCP servers, enabling the workflow to invoke these external tools throughout the protocol. Now, what you'll see in our cloud version, right, we're going to use this MCP client, and we're going to go over and grab our information from this MCP server trigger, right? So instead of having all three of these Google Calendar tools attached to the AI agent, now we just have this MCP client, and we just have one spot, essentially allowing for reproducibility, right? The other thing to note is this can be a little bit different here in self-hosted, right? Because within self-hosted, you have capabilities to connect to MCP servers that other companies have developed. We'll talk about a little bit later here in the slides, as well as the demos, but there's a lot more flexibility within self-host. All right, so let's talk about how does this work in NAN Cloud, right? So you can build MCP triggers and attach common tools. So let's say you want to build out something called Calendar MCP, right? Maybe you want to set up a read calendar tool or a schedule meeting tool or a cancel meeting tool, right? And you can use the MCP client tool to connect to the MCP trigger, as I mentioned. And then also you can define what tools are available to the AI agent. And the benefit is you can update the tools in one place, right? The MCP trigger. So just going back, right? Over here is where you could update these tools, right? And over here in the AI agent, you could say, hey, I only want X tools, right? And you can define that over there. Okay, so now how about with self-host, right? So you can use the MCP client tools to connect to external MCP servers, which is awesome, right? So just two examples, and there's hundreds of them out there. So first one, Firecrawl MCP. Firecrawl is a service I'll be covering here on the channel between the specific node as well as MCP. Something I'm going to use in my full-time job, but essentially Firecrawl is awesome for scraping, right? So you can also check out all the URLs on the site, have that as a tool, or scrape a page. You could set up that as a tool. Firecrawl has a lot of different stuff within their MCP server, and I'll be diving into that again in a future video. But also you have Postgres, right? And with Postgres being a database, if you're not familiar with it, you can debug backend issues, check for database changes. The one thing to note, right, is companies can change the MCP tools and you don't have to update your agent, which is awesome. Again, going back over here, right? In the past, you would have to attach a bunch of tools to this AI agent. Now you can just have this MCP client, right? And you can link directly the stuff that the companies have been able to build out. Now, the only issue with this is it's going to raise up a lot of different concerns if you have any type of data governance framework on that side of things, like what happens when there's new tools added, right? Is this going to impact any of your workflows? So this is something to look out for. Again, MCP is pretty new. But you're going to have to build out scenarios on that side of things. And there's probably going to be some errors that happen. And like all end workflows, there's going to be some issues at some point. All right. Also, if you want to jump into self-hosting end, I have a video that I just recently uploaded that shows you how to set this up within Hostinger within 15 minutes. Like it's super easy. I hold your hand. I show you exactly what to do, what to click on. And I also have a 10% off discount on top of the lowest price on Hostinger. So feel free to check that out if you want to jump into the self-hosted side of things. Highly recommend that if you are going to be jumping in learning kind of MCP in any end, because really like you're quite limited if you are going to be only using cloud. But yeah, so check that out over there. Okay. Also, there's 3 types of MCP connections right now. So you'll see SSE, which is server sent events. This is actually deprecated, so don't use that anymore. Typically, you'll see HTTP streamable, which is in both cloud and self-hosted. And then you have command line STDudio. This is self-hosted only, and this really allows for that community aspect of the MCP servers. I do expect at some point this will be put into cloud, but right now it's just not available. So that's kind of the background behind MCP. I try to limit this to about like 5 or 6 minutes for you guys. I think we hit that time frame. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start building. We're going to start off on cloud first, and then we're going to jump into self-hosted just because we're going to have to install a few things on self-hosted side of things. So yeah, let's jump right into cloud right now. All right, guys, we're going to start off with this build over here. This does not involve MCP in any capacity, but you'll quickly learn why we're doing this with this example. So what we have over here is we start off this workflow with a chat message received. All you have to do to get that is search over here, chat, go to the chat trigger. Then we have an AI agent. So again, just go over here, AI agent like that. And that's what I'm using over here. Model-wise, I'm using OpenAI. I'm using GPT-5 Mini. I have a full video how to set this up in 5 minutes if you want to learn how to do that. I won't be doing that in this video. I just set up a simple memory so that way some of the past messages can be received. I believe I just set the default over here 5. I didn't change that at all. And then I set up a few tools. So the first one is the think tool. So use this tool to think about something. It will not obtain more information, change the database, right? So I've seen think tool used quite a bit with AI agents. So just threw this in over here. And then I just added 3 of many Gmail tools. There's tons, right? Just to show you also, like you go over here to think, right? Think tool. And to get to Gmail, I go over here to Gmail. And what you'll see, there are, and I should actually click tool over here. There are tons, right? You go to Gmail tool, and then you go over here, right? Resource, you have those, and then you have operations all across over here. So lots of different options on this side of things, right? And what we have on here is 3: send a message, get many messages, and then get a message in Gmail. That's all we're going to use for this video. It's going to be pretty basic and straightforward, right? And again, add complexity as you want. I try to make these videos pretty good, pretty easy for you guys to comprehend what's going on. All right, so with these tools as well, a few different setups that I did. So number 1, what I did on this side things to get this screen, right? And it says define automatically by the model. If you go over here, you just click this, right? That grabs it with the model. By default, you'll have this as fixed. There's going to be nothing in there over there. So just click this and you're going to get that. So I did that to 2. I did that to subject as well as message on send a message in Gmail, right? Get many messages in Gmail, same exact thing, right? We're going to let the model determine what we're going to do and then get a message in Gmail. Now, here's the cool thing too. If we wanted to go extra above and beyond, we can actually change the tool description. So you can see what it is set manually, like get a message in Gmail, right? And what I'd recommend is like you customize these for your use cases, right? Get many messages in Gmail. This one over here, right? Again, set manually, send a message in Gmail. And like these are pretty straightforward on the Gmail side of things, but depending on the tool, right? You might want to add in a little bit more context, a little bit more flavor on this side of things, right? But just to show you kind of like how this works, I'm going to go over here and say, what was the last email sent by Breakout Sports 3? My other YouTube channel is Breakout Cards. I collect cards for a hobby, right? So we'll send that over here. And you'll see it's running over here. It starts with the OpenAI chat model. Then it's going to go to get many messages, right? Because this one over here by default, I believe is 50 messages. So it's going to look for anything, Breakout Sports 3, right? And it's going to look at the latest email, right? And I should say what was the latest instead of last. I did that my first time building out this video. Let's see if it gets it correctly. It goes back into this OpenAI chat model, goes back over here to the OpenAI agent. And then we'll see how this ends up going. It should be pretty correct. And yeah. Okay, so here we go. Most recent message from Breakout Sports 3, and it gives me my full email as well. From Ryan Nolan to ryannolandata@gmail.com. Sports card shows. Here are the upcoming sports card shows this year. And then it also attaches the labels. Would like me to open and show the full message, reply, archive it, or take some other action, right? So we have all those different options that we could do off of here. And again, this is chat, so you can go back and forth as well. And we've attached these tools, right? Okay. So here is kind of the MCP side of it. So we can actually store all of these in one place, right? And just to show you, right, here's going to be another workflow, and I'm just going to actually detach this. I'm going to reset the chat. We're going to detach this. And we're going to drag this down below, right? So now what we have is a second AI agent, and this is just going to be a workflow over here. So again, chat message received goes into the AI agent, right? Same exact system prompt over here, where you're an AI agent that manages an inbox. You have tools attached to read emails and send emails. This should be given to you based off the user message. And I don't know if I talked about that above. If not, I apologize. But yeah, so that's what we have in over here, right? Again, same exact model, no tweaks, right? I literally just duplicated this up over here. Then we have our memory, and then, right? So we have that 5. And then the only other thing we've changed now is instead of all of these tools above, right, we have something down below over here called MCP client. And we click on over here. And first thing you'll notice is we have an endpoint. Now, I'll show you how to get this endpoint here in a second. Next, you'll see server transport. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, right, in those slides. So SSE, you can see it's deprecated. We should not be using this. We should be using HTTP streamable. And then also, like, if you get this into production, right, you want to set up some sort of authentication. So I don't have that here for this video, and I plan on making a full video talking about authentication and NAN and security as well in the future. So make sure to stay tuned for that. But tools to include, right, you can go over here. You can choose all the tools, right? Selected, all accept. Now, none of this makes sense because you guys didn't actually see my second workflow. So this over here is our MCP client. And then over here, as I talked about at the beginning, is our MCP server trigger. Now, here's the deal. If you take a look, we have the same 4 tools that we defined over here, right? These 4, we've defined them specifically over here in this MCP server trigger, right? So all these are going to be over here. And again, right, defined automatically by the model. I set all these up over here. Again, just going through each of these, right? And again, you can set these manual descriptions if you really want to on that side of things, right? So essentially what we're going to do, I'm going to do the same exact thing we did above, but this time all of our tools are hosted in this MCP server trigger, whereas on this side of things, all we have is one tool for this MCP client, right? So again, I'm just going to go over here and say, what was the latest email I received from Breakout Sports 3? And it's going to go through over here, and it actually could not connect. So one small error that I have over here. So this is my testing URL. You need to actually, and I'm going to save this really quick. You need to execute the workflow on the side when you're testing it. So this is doing that. And then what I'll do over here is retry this. So I'm glad I had that error, and now it's going to work, right? So that's how you get this to work with testing. And then you can see over here, right? So this will go through, and hopefully we get the same results. I mean, I'm sure it'll have a little bit different text, but we should be getting very similar results, right? And again, like if you want specific results too, like they can go into your prompt, they can go to your output parser. It just really depends on what you're building out. I didn't really specify it. This is like a super, super bare bones MCP, right? So we will go through it on that side of things. All right, so take a look. The latest message from Breakout Sports 3 from, right, subject, received, timestamp, which I don't believe we actually got that above over here. Snippet, labels. Would you like me to open and show the full message? I showed you what happens on the test side of things. Now let's go over here to the MCP trigger and let's put this as a production URL. So what I'm going to do is set this to production. And what you should do also is change this over here. And what you should also do is change this over here on the MCP client. So right now we have the endpoint as the testing, but now we want to move this into production. So we're going to say production. Also, one thing to note is once we move this into production URL, we need to make this workflow active. So this is now an active workflow, and it says you can now connect your MCP clients to the URL using SSE or Streamable HTTP transports. These executions will not show up immediately in the editor, but you can see in the execution list, right? So got it on that side of things. So this is now active, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing all over again, right? What is the latest email sent by Breakout Sports 3? And again, I'll change this up for the next one. We'll actually send an email, but I just want to show you like, you know, version 1 right over here with just the AI agent, all the tools, version 2 with the test, and then also version 3 with the production, all right? So kind of just how you change it up. And then what we'll do is one more test, a little bit different text on this side of things and go forward with it, right? And you can see most recent email from Breakout Sports 3. So we have this over here, right? And I'll say, can you please send Breakout Sports 3 an email? 3 an email. Have the subject say live NAN video and the body say this was sent during a quick demo for YouTube. I didn't practice this one, so it should work though, because we have that tool and that MCP over here. And it should work because we have this in the MCP server trigger as a tool, right? But let's see if that works. We will test that out. Done. I sent the email over here on this side of things, live NAN video. This was sent during a quick demo for YouTube. And then we have this text over here. This was sent automatically with NAN. Some people like it, some don't, right? And just to show you how to turn that off really, really quick, I believe I talked about this in my Gmail video. But over the send a message with Gmail, all you have to do is go over here to add an option and it says append NAN attribute. Just make sure that's off, right? And then you won't have that here on the bottom. But yeah, that is essentially it on the cloud side of things. Okay, and just to reiterate kind of what we covered on the cloud portion, because it's going to get a little bit more complicated when we move into the self-hosted. But what we have over here is initially I showed you we had a chat trigger going into this AI agent and had 4 tools, right? And then I decided, hey, let's move all of these tools into a MCP server, right? So now all of these tools are in one server in one place, which we can manage. And this is replicatable, right? So like, let's say there's multiple workflows that I needed to leverage these Gmail tools in, right? I would just have to use this over here and then just put in that endpoint. Now, if you're going to be putting this into production, use the production endpoint. If you're just testing this out, use the testing endpoint, right? Make sure to switch those out. Also, when you're in production, make sure to set up some sort of authentication. So yeah, again, we're just building that out. And then also on the server trigger, right? We have this URL. I showed you essentially how we could use it within NAN, but you can actually use it outside of NAN as well if you really wanted to. That's kind of the beauty of MCP servers, right? So you can actually build this outside, or not build this, but use this outside, right? And a lot of companies have their own MCP servers, and we're going to be covering that here shortly in cloud. In addition, right, there is so much to explore on the MCP server side of it within NAN too, right? I just showed you Gmail, but there's hundreds of tools out there, and you can have a bunch of different use cases for specific MCP server triggers, right? So feel free to explore it. I might make some other additional videos on that side of things if there's some requests based around it. But what we're going to do now is jump into kind of part 2 in this video, or I guess technically part 3, where we're going to specifically look at the self-hosted version. All right, I will see you guys there. All right, so I'm in self-hosted now. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to click these 3 dots here in the bottom and go into settings, right? And then the next thing, what we're going to want to do over here is look for community nodes. And what we're going to do is go over here and say NAN nodes MCP, right? That's what we're going to be using on here. So just install, right? NAN nodes MCP. I understand install, right? I already have this in over here, so you guys don't need to do that, but you're going to start that off on this side of things, right? So let me go back over here. We're just going to create a brand new workflow. We're going to start off with the chat trigger as well. So we're going to start off with that. And then what we're going to do next is have our AI agent. So AI agent. Okay. Great. And then chat model, we'll set OpenAI, GPT-5. Okay. Memory, we'll do simple memory again. 5 is fine. And then what we're going to do over here is we're going to go MCP. Now, what you'll notice is there's 2 MCP client tools now, right? So what we're going to do is go into our other tool, because this is the community version of it, right? This is the one that we already use, where you have the endpoint, you have the server, but we don't want to use this, right? This is, I wouldn't say junk, but it's not useful, right? So we're going to go over here and we're going to go MCP, and we're going to go to this MCP client tool. And this is awesome, right? So the first thing on here is we can create a new credential for every MCP server, right? And again, you can set tools. You can either set automatically or set manually, right? And operations, you have a lot of different operations in over here as well, right? So let's go through an example of setting up a tool over here. We'll find MCP and we will test this out. All right. And I actually wasn't really planning on covering this in the video, but I was kind of looking for ideas, and I found this website called mcpservers.org. I have no affiliation with them, but what you can see over here is they have 1968 servers listed on the website. There's some official, there's search, scraping, communication, productivity, development, database, cloud service, file system, cloud storage, version control, or other. So, you know, this probably has a lot of different ideas for you guys if you want to start researching MCP servers and things that you would like to use. Now, I do know one of the things I want to use here in the future for a video is going to be Firecrawl. So maybe we'll actually just use Firecrawl for the setup over here. And what I'll do is go over here. You can either do official or web scraping, and Firecrawl should be under here. So let's view details on this side of things. And this is pretty nice. We have all this information on this side of things. So let's set this up over here. So what we're going to do is go into this MCP client. We're going to create a new credential. It's going to go over here and say Firecrawl MCP server. All right. And then you'll see the 3 options, right? And this is the one that isn't available in cloud. So now what we need to do is grab our information. So again, from a few different websites, right? You can either grab this MCP integration over here, or you could grab it directly on the website over here, which I just showed you, right? So either or. What I'm going to do is just grab the example on this side of things. So command, we have npx. So just go into NAN, put our command as npx. Up next, we have the args. Now this is an array, but we have to actually modify this. And inside the arguments, we're going to remove these double quotes like that. And then over here. And then lastly, we have our environment. So grab Firecrawl API key. And what you're going to do, and I'm going to probably make a text over here in a second. We're going to say Firecrawl API key, right? No quotes, right? Just whatever's in the middle. We're going to say equals, And then we're going to grab our API key. So to get your API keys, just go to API keys, copy that, and then paste it in over here. Okay, click save, and it'll say credentials saved successfully. And that doesn't mean it works, right? So what you need to do to make sure it works is execute the step. Now, so if it doesn't work, you're going to get a 32,000 error. If it will work, right, and we just put list tools, it's going to show you all the tools associated. So I'm going to click execute step. And you can see we have all the different tools. Awesome. And if you wanted to get all the tools as well, right, you can go back into that website and it talks about all the different tools, and feel free to read it. There's a lot of really cool information on here, but you can also have it directly in NAN. So just to show you really quick the differences, right? So first, make sure that you put in NPX, right? And let me actually go over here and just grab this to show you guys, right? That's not the JSON. Let me go back up over here and grab that JSON. Okay, so we have the JSON over here. So what we're going to do, again, just going back over here to NAN. So we have this JSON, and let me expand that out, right? And obviously the formatting's not there, but we're going to go over here and we're going to say a few things. Number one, we have NPX, right? Number two, we have this here in the middle. Again, no quotes. This took me a little bit, right? And then lastly, we have this equals, and should be all together, and we'll say API key like this, right? Your API key. And that is how it works, right? Argument 1, argument 2, argument 3, just going again over here, right? Edit, command NPX, arguments there, environment, it's like that. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, a little bit confusing the first time, and then just execute this. Okay. So next we're going to duplicate this. So, and go over here and just copy this tool over. And what we're going to look for now is change this. And instead of list tools, right, which we need to have list tools in over here, we should have execute tools as well. Now I lifted this online. So all I did is write some JSON over here. So we have the tool name, and you can see from AI, it says key and description, right? So grab the tool name and then call this tool when asked to execute a Firecrawl tool, right? So just grab this online. I saw how to use it, populated in over here. Pretty straightforward. And then tool parameters defined automatically by the model. I wish this was automatically by the model, but it's fine. It's like pretty easy JSON on this side of things. All right, and to test this out, I wrote a quick message saying from this URL, grab the item's name and price, output it as JSON. And all I did is I went to eBay. I looked for a card. So this is an N76 George Washington. This sold for $43.63 and we'll see if it works. So we will test this one out. If not, we will have to tweak a few things. This goes to the tools, right? Goes to chat model, and hopefully it goes into this execute tool next. And I've scraped eBay before. So like I probably wouldn't recommend using Firecrawl for eBay. There's other approaches for it, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, if you don't know how to set up a scraper, like it's not too bad using Firecrawl, but regardless, I'd probably use it for more like web crawling, multiple sites and different things like that. But we see what happens. All right. So it says node was successful name. So you have the name over here as well. And then you have the price, which lines up exactly with what that URL is. And again, there's a lot of tools with Firecrawl. I just want to show you guys like a very basic example in Self-Host, right? All right. And just to kind of reiterate this one more time, we did not create this MCP server, right? You never saw a trigger or anything like that for Firecrawl, right? Firecrawl's development team did. All I did is search for Firecrawl MCP server, which I did know it was out there. And essentially, like I just grabbed the information, which Firecrawl has it on their website, which I assume more websites are going to have it. More websites or tools are going to have it. but I also went and I found it on another website, which MCP servers, right? So do some research if the tools that you want to use have MCP servers or not. And then I just connected it in over here, right? Again, use the stdio and then command arguments and then the environments. It's going to be probably a little bit different for every tool that you use, but that's how I built that out in over here. All right. And that is essentially it. I know we covered a lot in this video. Hopefully you learned something new. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm also taking on customers if you need to have any end-to-end solutions built. So make sure to hit me up down below in the description. All right. I'll catch you guys in another video.